What's going on, Supply Chain TV? It's Andrew with Shelfware, and I'm coming to you with episode 6 of From the Frontlines. And as you can tell, I am still in my office, not on the front lines. But today, I wanted to get you out and about, which is what we want to do on the show, is get you into the trenches, out there talking to the people that are on the front lines, sometimes the bleeding edge of industries, to talk about all of the hot topics and get our hands dirty. So today, we're going to do it virtually. And we're going to address a topic that is a very common, very trending item right now, and that is COVID's effect on globalization. So for years now, obviously, the U.S. economy has been offshoring all sorts of products to our friends in Southeast Asia and Europe and South America, Central America, and it sure appears that COVID will greatly affect that trend. It'll reverse it, perhaps. And you'll see trends like reshore, nearshore, and this morning, as part of a event put on by Let's Talk Supply Chain with Sarah Barnes-Humphrey, I heard a brand new term, hashtag sureshoring, and that is sureshoring as an S-U-R-E, shoring. That is the concept of just bringing your supply chain somewhere safer, closer to home. So whatever you want to call it, is globalization at risk? I wanted to talk to a manufacturer, and today we're going to talk virtually with Jonathan Meighan of Lake Erie Rubber. They make custom molded rubber products of all shapes and sizes, and they are located in Erie, Pennsylvania. It's a phenomenal little rubber shop. I've known John for quite a while, and they do great work. So we're going to get his opinion, and without further ado, I'll hop right into it. This episode is going to be a bit longer than usual because John and I are fairly chatty people. So if you want to stick with us, it should be about a 10-minute conversation. It's a very interesting perspective from the front lines. So hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks for tuning in. So John, with COVID concerns shutting down travel, international and domestic, we've been hearing a lot about the end of globalization recently. And as a U.S. manufacturer, are you seeing immediately any renewed interest in manufacturing of rubber products stateside?
Not so far. I think that in the current situation, it's a little bit fresh. And when you look at lead times that we have to produce products, most of the things that we're currently producing were ordered prior to a lot of the COVID changes happening, or right as it was happening. So we haven't seen a drastic change yet as companies coming to us looking for an American manufacturer so far.
Yeah. And are you hopeful, or do you anticipate that happening, or have you heard rumblings, I guess, with your network?
I would anticipate some changes. I think from my experience, when we have something, and the only thing I can really compare it to in the past is when I had customers who were burned by purchasing internationally. So for example, maybe they received a bad lot of product from China, and it was on the water for 6 weeks before they received it, and now they've got a really long lead time to recover from a quality defect that they received. And what I've seen in the past is when companies take a big hit because of that, or can't ship something to their customer with one of those issues, a lot of times what I see them do is they create a secondary US-based supplier to support, and they give a portion of the blend to that supplier to help mitigate any sort of issue like that. I think that with this being widespread, so almost every company is seeing some impact from the global shutdown, I'm going to guess that more companies are going to adopt policies similar to that, where they say, you know what, this really hurt us because our supply chain was interrupted substantially, and it would have been a lot less impacted had we had a localized supplier to produce the parts. And so while I think many companies are still driven by cost bottom line, and then certain products that are purchased, at least for the rubber industry, it's difficult for us to compete on everything on price. I think there will still be products bought globally, but I have a feeling there will be a lot of new policies coming out to make sure that there's a blended purchasing from at least one localized supplier in case of any sort of emergency like this, so that the supply chain potentially can be ramped up locally to support through that time period.
Right. So everything on this, it seems like in social media and online, we always kind of tend to veer towards the dramatic. So when you hear terms like the end of globalization, what you're really saying is what I've seen happen a lot is it's going to be a measured approach by most smart companies, a blended approach, and they're going to have strategies involved in bringing part of their supply chain back, either by percentage or by part, to mitigate future concerns with it. Yeah, that's interesting. If there was, this is my kind of the next place my mind went, because I've been involved in the import side. So I've been in Asia for years now for my family business importing rubber products. And I am thinking if there was a real rush to reshore rubber products, to the U.S., does the U.S. even have the labor force that is willing and ready to do the work?
I don't think so. I think that if you had asked me that 3 months ago, I would tell you definitely not.
Mm-hmm.
We were struggling to hire employees here at a rate to keep up with some of our growth, which wasn't a huge amount of growth, but solid growth. Mm-hmm. I think that depending on how things pan out with unemployment as coronavirus restrictions are lifted, maybe. So I think it depends. If we get out of this and unemployment is sitting at 10% or more, then we probably will have the labor to be able to reshore a lot, because there's probably going to be a lot of people later this year that might move to a manufacturing job that maybe they would not have done in the past. But if the labor market changes where we're not in these very, very low unemployment times, people probably will consider and shift. So I think there would be substantially more capacity for manufacturing if it shifted and the unemployment stays high.
Okay, yeah, I could see that happening. Let's say that happens. Let's play that out a little bit. If we had the bodies, the people, the labor willing to come to U.S. manufacturing jobs, the second half of that is do we as a manufacturing community here in the U.S. still have the expertise, the know-how, the proficiencies to make some of these technical products well? Or has that been overseas too long, perhaps?
Well, I'm sure it depends based on industry. For us in the rubber industry, and particularly in custom molding, like what we do at Lake Erie Rubber, generally we're producing the more complex products. And that's usually where we're able to compete better, is on more complex designs, whereas a lot of the overseas parts that at least the customers that I supply to, they're buying a lot of the smaller, higher volume, simpler products overseas, and they come to us for some of the more complicated, or if they're in a very technical application that requires very specific performance, they come to us for those things usually.
Yeah. Well, that's good, I guess, in a sense. Maintaining your niche as a technical supplier versus going after the commodities has left you with the know-how inside your organization anyway to produce the technical products. So you just, I guess back to your previous answer, was you just have to secure the actual labor, the willingness to produce these products. Well, I'll wrap up with this, John. In your little world, in your perspective, from your niche, what is your best guess at a timeline to see some of these things play out?
I think, and I worked for GE Transportation for 10 years before I went to owning my own manufacturing company, and I was there for a period of time. So I have some experience with how these kinds of shifts take place. And it won't be instantaneous, because when you think about the resource available at a company to go out and source a new supplier, qualify them, and then qualify the individual components that they want to purchase, I think you're looking at least 6 months to do any substantial amount of changeover, and probably more out to 12 months before you really get a significant portion changed over, just because one of the limiting factors will be the resource available at these companies that want to make the change, to do their due diligence and find the supplier and qualify them appropriately.
Right. So 6-12 months, if somebody was really motivated, they could move a complicated, complex supply chain in your niche.
Yeah, in 12 months, you could, I used to purchase electronics and a lot of different commodities across the board. In 12 months, you can make substantial changes to your supply base. So my guess is they would probably select key components that are most critical to their supply chain and start moving those over, which can be any type of component really, but give a company 12 months and I think many of them could change their supply base, particularly if they're adding a second source and trying to develop that source. In that amount of time, you could change a lot of components over.
Right. Well, from one small business owner to another, I hope, I would be perfectly happy with a 6 to 12 month timeline to see some of these changes benefit us. So I hope you're right there, and let's just hope we can find a labor to accommodate. It's going to be an interesting time regardless as all this shakes out. So I really appreciate your time, John, this morning, and hopefully your insights will give some folks some confidence to address some of the issues we're all looking at collectively. So thank you.
Yeah, always good to talk to you. Appreciate you having me join to talk about this. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
It will. And I'll make sure to post your information, and folks can find Lake Erie Rubber for all their custom molded rubber needs.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Yep.